150,000 souls.
British Telecom had been for 70 years nearly a civil service department of government. And that's the way it was structured, and it thought of itself as part of government. It didn't think of itself as a supplier in the marketplace trying to look at customers, and customers, to the extent that they were subscribers, were somewhat privileged to have access to the service. And so it was a quite different sort of ethos of the business and of the people in it.
Hair was up and hems were down when telephones were young and Queen Victoria was old. Switchboards were plug-in, cables were copper.
Would you please assign my...
Over time, hairs changed, hems changed, Queen Victoria died, but the technology endured for 100 years. Exchanges went automatic, but copper cables still hauled a pair of wires to each customer. Messages still went down them as shards of electricity.
How are they on delivery, if they sell?
They claim they can meet all demand.
And then it all changed. That cable may look like any telephone cable laid in the past 100 years, but it isn't. Those fibers are glass, not copper wire. Down those fine rods, messages slide through the trunk network as packages of light, name and address attached. Zippy globules of light careening cross-country past banks of artificial intelligences that zap them like the points on a railway line to wherever they've got to zip. It spelt slow death to the old technology, to the Strowger exchanges. This one served Winston Churchill at Chequers. Massive, magisterial, doomed for scrap. Strowger was an American undertaker. He found a girl on the local switchboard was plugging his calls and his corpses to another undertaker. So he invented the automatic telephone exchange to cut out the operator, and with it became immortal. Every whir and click is a story. These glorious museum pieces cannot now be given away. See the toothless gaps where once stood telephone exchanges. How many people did you have working here?
There was about 15 on maintenance. And
15 in maintenance?
15 on maintenance. It was an old-style electromechanical system, which meant that it is a system which needs adjustment and people keeping it going.
Was it busy?
It was very busy. In fact, besides this floor here, there were two other floors with equipment on, and the fourth floor had a manual board.
Do you miss them?
Well, it's very quiet now, very quiet indeed.
I bet it is. It's creepy.
Yes, yes. When the wind blows through some of the flaps near the windows, it does give it an eerie feeling.
Eerier still. It's what's replaced all that used to whir and click and throb with life and bodies. Superfluous in this new photo-optical world. Unmanned, tucked in an obscure corner of the building, grey, anonymous boxes. Grey, faceless as only computers can be, because that is what they are. Parts of a monster complex of electronic switches zapping our little parcels of messages around the system. BT seen in the round consists of one single quivering computer suspended on cobweb filaments of glass. Where have all the young men gone? And the middle-aged, and the oldsters. Into software every one, and 6,000 of them work at BT. 6,000.
What we could do is, with the fast access databases, do it at system startup.
All yours, Malcolm.
Engineers of the next century. Their nails are clean, no oil can or lathe for them.
We picked a PC as our terminal here. That's going to be our window onto the world. That fits in with one of the new environments that we're trying to set up.
Their engineering is all in the mind, constructing artificial intelligences on screens and keyboards. Here it is in the flesh, Oswestry, BT's brain centre, based on computers. On screen, the world's network. Oswestry is the mastermind behind all the long-distance traffic in and out and round the country. Diverting it, sending it round the strangest byways to avoid congestion. It's why long-distance calls go through faster, and often against the odds.
At the time of the Olympics, for instance, there was a very large increase in calls to Spain. So in instances like that, we would want to make use of, in effect, the world's capacity in order to make sure as many calls get through. We could send the calls via Washington, New York in the morning, because obviously people in America are asleep during the European morning, and perhaps send them via Australia once we get to the afternoon.
Are you serious that I want to call Madrid from London and the call will go to America first?
The call could go via America, yes. And you as the customer wouldn't tell any difference. You obviously wouldn't be charged anymore for it having gone via America. But yes, that could happen.
Oswestry is why 100,000 at a time can ring phone-ins, telethons, televotes without jamming the exchanges in half the country. The intelligent computers perform like gatekeepers at a turnstile and make the voters come down the network in an orderly file.
We want as many calls as possible to get through to the televote, because that's obviously important to the TV company, but we want everyone else who wants to use the network to get through without any problems. And so we take a balanced view in that particular instance to let just enough calls through to the televote to keep all of their answering machines full, and in effect stop other calls closer to the origin, closer to the customer originating exchange. And that frees up network capacity to let many other people get through at the same time.
The technology is spectacular, but every Eden has its snake. The nightmare of life with these increasingly intelligent intelligences is knowing that one day there might be some odd combination of circumstances that the computers were not warned about, don't know how to handle. One of them will flip its lid and bring the rest of the system crashing in sympathy. The computers now write a lot of their own software, and some of it would stretch from London to Brighton if it were printed out. Result? Humans won't have a clue where the trouble started, and this is not fantasy. It's happened at least 3 times in America: New York, Los Angeles, and Washington. There was chaos. Does that worry them at Oswestry?
No, not at all.
You don't suddenly sort of wake up screaming in the night and think some bug has got into my computers?
No. Can we not go down that road?
Your nerves are good, are they?
My nerves are steel, aren't they, John?
Expensive, best quality steel. BT has swung in a decade from being among the worst to one of the best equipped telecom businesses in the world, with all the arrogance that the best equipment and money can buy. It would have happened without privatizing. The key decisions were taken long before, but privatizing provided a flood tide of profits to see them through. Not such good marks elsewhere. BT's London head office. Fewer feet through the doors than those unprivatized glory days when headquarters numbered 25,000. In 9 years, privatizing and technology have between them taken their toll. Numbers are down from 250,000 to 170,000, and they won't stop falling till they hit the 100 mark. Sweeping away the old civil service culture, or at least sweeping it under the carpet. It hasn't been pleasant.
It is difficult for an organisation to take the sort of buffeting that in many ways BT has taken. A buffeting from changing technology, a buffeting from changing organisation, as you say, a lot of capital substitution for labour and labour moving out of BT fairly quickly now. An organisation where people used to join it thinking this was a trade for life, but which can't offer that kind of security that people were used to any longer.
What didn't help was one massive technical revolution, plus management mismanaged. 2 vicious strikes, 4 reorganizations, 2 chairmen, 3 managing directors, and 40% new managers.
They all come bearing their own bit of the truth. I mean, those from IBM said the way IBM did things was the only way. Those from Rank Xerox, the same, STC, wherever they came from, even GEC, even the BBC, we all came with our ideas that this is the way we should run something. And for a while, I reckon it was rather like a Tower of Babel.
Well, you'll have to get over there and do it.
What about the workers then? The soft underbelly of BT. 8 o'clock in the morning, a depot in southeast London. The service engineers collect their day's work. Overalls are the men who climb poles, go down holes. In suits and ties, BT regulation issue, designed by Roland Klein. The men who deal with business customers. Most men have been trained for both jobs. But a lot of telecoms now calls for no more technical skill than it needs to screw a box on the wall.
You have lesser number of people and you have different kinds of skills in those people. They must be able to be aware of, for example, which card to change. If there is a part of the system they have to change, they have to be intelligent workers themselves. But there are far less of them.
They do seem to be much less skilled, though. But they're just following instructions here and there. There is no need for them to have any special ability.
I wouldn't put it at that level. We could debate this for some time, but I think that you're right that the mechanical skills have gone and are going, but I think some of those operational skills are not, some of those operational jobs are not totally de-skilled.
It takes a dexterity to open a large packing case in a small space, to screw the junction box onto the wall and connect the right set of wires to it. And do it without treading on the cat. But it's not skilled in the traditional telecom sense, and nor is changing the dud circuit boards in a large piece of equipment. The men at the depots whose skills have been taken away are nearly half BT's workers. They smell redundancy, and they're right. Unhappy, apprehensive men.
It's a little bit gloomy, yeah. I think morale's pretty low at the moment, but...
Why should it be? Because BT is very successful.
I don't really know, really. It just is, isn't it? I mean, we've lost a load of people through redundancies and whatever.
But you've loads of work at the depot.
I suppose we have, yeah. But they still talk about redundancies all the time, don't they?
Still more?
Oh. Shouldn't really ask me, should you?
The morale, as you might expect, is not good. If you say to a workforce, look, we've got all these pressures on the business, we've got competition, we've got regulation, we have a rather weak economy, and we are having to reduce costs, as well as being able to reduce costs, people are not comfortable about that, and therefore morale is not good, and we're working very hard to deal with that situation all the time.
Well, can you? Is there anything you can do?
Well, you can never solve the problem completely, but what I do believe is that if you tell people the facts, you tell them the truth, and you tell them constantly, repeatedly, there is an acceptance of the reality of the business.
Is the management doing as much as it could to keep up morale?
No, there is scope for improvement. I think BT has spelt out the commercial imperatives. I think that it needs to spend more time on ensuring the employees understand where the company is going, where it wants to get to, and making people feel they are part of that team and that winning team in BT. I think also they need to listen more to their employees in terms of customer service. I think people want, employees within BT want to have more of direct contribution in saying how they feel the customer's service can be improved.
Remoteness and isolation and lack of contact have been besetting sins of successive and status-minded managements at BT. BT's newest managing director is Michael Heifer, a newcomer from the city with no BT hang-ups, and apparently the only senior manager to eat regularly in the staff dining room.
Not too bad. I think I'll have some ham, please.
But one swallow doesn't make a summer. One ham salad, one new boss man. They do not change BT from a bureaucracy into a well-run business overnight. They don't put some sense of hope and some sense of direction into a demoralized workforce overnight.
Thanks very much.
The surging 10% annual growth in telecoms that has made BT so rich has also covered up many sins. But that glorious growth has now stopped. Telecoms is beginning to show all the signs of a mature industry. And everything now depends on BT holding its customers. Can it? Will it?
Insurance, investment, pensions. Whatever your needs, whatever you are, Eagle Star covers your world.
You may not want your children to watch this commercial for Shambosi Real Chocolate Mousse because it contains scenes of sheer indulgence. Made with real chocolate. Shambosi Real Chocolate Mousse. Shh, just don't tell the children.
We were thinking, would this be any use?
Oh. Good old Yellow Pages.
Del Monte Pure Orange Juice. It tastes so good first thing. You should get some for your Del Monte man.
Bloodless white entrails, neatly packed as human guts. This is connoisseurs telecom, tailored for the spoilt darlings of the networks. Beneath the floors of super users like Reuters in the news and data business. People BT dare not lose. They get the biggest price cuts, the newest glass fiber. Cables laid to the door, up the stairs, under the floor. Subtle refinements, months of software to smooth out hiccups in the brains of the networks that might upset the data transmission. Very highbrow stuff.
BT has changed a very great deal in the last 10 years, and I think one's got to recognise that this is, you know, this telecom revolution is not a 9-day wonder. It's actually started, it's been going now for the best part of 20 years in the United States. It's been going for well over 10 years here in the United Kingdom. And BT has made enormous changes to improve its service and so on to major users such as ourselves.
The people who've got the most out of privatising, the technology, the grovelling service, the 50% discounts. But they are also the customers who deliver the profits. And BT has preferred almost any business customer to any domestic customer. And it is easy to see why. Why are you having the telephone put in?
Well, it's more or less for the family to keep in touch with me. Now I'm on my own.
Tell me more.
See, I lost the wife 2 months ago. We never bothered with the phone much because it was one just at the top of the road I used to use. And the children decided that it'd be far easier to have a phone in here for them to get in touch with me.
You want a phone. The order's booked. The BT organisation goes into gear. Forms to be filled. Engineer gets instructions from the depot. It's not unusual to find a house without a telephone. 1 in 8 hasn't got one. Loads van, goes to look for house. Turns out to be an up-the-pole job. This is really low-tech telecoms. It is windy. It is very cold. Hang on like fury. Take a lead from the main cable, fix it to the house wall. Time to go indoors. It's about an hour and a half since the van left the depot. Drill through the wall for the cable. Now this is where you can lose time. Some concrete is as hard as granite. Start putting it together. This is the fiddly bit. Time allowed for a job like this is around 2 hours, but it may take up to 3 for a man on his own. And when the wind is so strong that the ladder needs holding, you will have to send 2. Cable is wired up to the junction box. That's the job more or less finished. Just make sure it works. Give me a guess. How often do you think you'll use it? Once a week? Twice a week?
About twice, 3 times probably.
BT are not going to make very much money out of you, are they?
Not really.
You really are going to be a rotten customer. You've had a man here the whole afternoon putting in the telephone. Now you say you're not going to use it.
Well, I never used to use it much before.
All that time and effort. And the average domestic telephone sits mute and unused for 23 hours, 55 minutes of the day. Small wonder BT's given them pretty low priority.
I think the worst thing that we still do is in the way in which we handle some of the basics for the ordinary customers here in the UK. I don't think that as yet we have really got our minds round how to market, sell to and cosset the ordinary individual customer. Now that will come. In fact, it's coming now. You can see the beginnings of things.
Amen and hallelujah. So why let the niggler and the quibbler and the man with the small print continue to spoil it? There's a simple promise to mend domestic breakdowns within 9 hours. Wonderful. But it's 9 working hours. And BT's men work from 8 to 5 and not yet at weekends. So 9 working hours, that usually means tomorrow. And it could mean the day after tomorrow.
Are we looking for a residential or business number? Thank you.
Britannia Music. Which town, please?
Another example, directory inquiries. Another wonderful operation. the second largest database in the world, the queen of all the inquiry services about bills, faults, new orders, 999s, obscene callers. This side of BT, the consumer side, this grows as the engineering base shrinks. It is a remarkable service. 23 million entries, 60,000 changes in a day. Time to find a number, 15 to 30 seconds. When the operator draws a blank, it's because firms and people have moved, changed their names, gone broke, done a bunk, or gone ex-directory. But BT makes you pay number or no number. Is that charge commonsensical or incompetent public relations?
It's a good question, and you can be sure we've thought about that a lot. Our view is that the charge we make is for the use of the time taken to look for the number. And if it turns out that the customer who's being inquired after is ex-directory, we feel that we have provided the labour to get to that point. I understand that there is an alternative argument, that is, we should charge a little bit more for the people who get a successful answer and charge nothing to those who don't. On balance, we've chosen to do it the way we do.
And you're not worried about the effect on goodwill?
Every business has to make some decisions that don't please everybody in what it considers to be, overall fairness.
And another example. That is part of the £400 million spent on telephone call boxes. BT's boxes, opened, sorted, counted, bagged, and off to the banks. By anyone else's standards, it would be a big business with 3,000 staff. Coin boxes are more popular than phone cards. 5 years ago, around 1 in 4 was broken and stayed broken. They were usually filthy and frequently stank. Now they are washed regularly and expensively. BT made a public example of payphones when its reputation hit rock bottom in the late 80s. They were mended. The sexy Susie cards are now regularly cleared away. The glass sides stand clear of the base so that when they are used as lavatories, the moisture, as one engineer delicately phrased it, runs away. But with jacks, levers, power drills, and even lifting tackle, 1,000 coin boxes are stolen a week by organised gangs raiding up to 50 in a sweep. Half the boxes in the country will be smashed each year. An infuriating dilemma for BT.
If we cannot actually secure the cash on the streets, then the time will come when we will have to take it off the street. Because not only is it a costly thing for us, but it's actually putting those payphones out of service for quite a long time in some cases if they really damage it. And that means that we're not providing the kind of emergency lifeline service that is expected of us and, in fact, our customers depend upon. So this year we're really going to go for a security enhancement program which will strengthen the boxes, strengthen our processes for surveillance, and hopefully control the crime. If it doesn't work, then from next year onwards, we will certainly have to move away from 20% card and 80% cash, probably to a reverse of that proportion over a 4 or 5 year period. And I will then only have cash in those environments where it's protected or semi-supervised.
This is part of BT's public image that people care about. It is a serious public relations issue. Supposing it's for a doctor, or my car broken on a lonely road at night. How would you feel if the telephone took only cards? Having invested so much effort in payphones, why destroy the image for the sake of peanuts, in BT's terms? Just carrying the damage or thwarting the thieves. Good intentions spoiled in the detail, summed up in expensive efforts to befriend the public with facelifts of the corporate image. Since breaking with the post office, not one redesign, but 2. The last cost over 50 million. 3 designs. And can BT have possibly intended that a maiden lady like me should be indelicately minded of been thrown the odd sop, but they've little to be grateful for or even to be interested in so far. So where is the change going to come from? Let there be, they said when Telecoms was privatised. Let there be competition for BT, and there was. There, with its own trunk network and the newest technology, was Mercury. Highly visible, lots of money, lots of new management. Mercury had one huge piece of luck in 1987. BT was in a technical shambles, had a waiting list for 250,000 telephones, and the City of London was roaring for new lines. Mercury was on the ball, cleaned up, and still has 60% of the city's business. But the green shoots of competition are slow growers. If you count heads, fewer than 2% of us use Mercury even now, even after those years when BT was a byword for incompetence and arrogance.
There was Mercury sitting with a blank sheet of paper against BT with £13 billion worth of assets in the ground, owning all of the customers, and Mercury was a network to build before it could start to compete. And there it was all on its own, trying to match this huge investment that BT had invested over 100 years.
Not sufficiently robust to live in a world where BT wasn't strictly regulated. The Office of Telecommunications is as manipulative a piece of state intervention as ever came out of a Thatcherite cabinet. The regulator's target isn't for once the lowest possible price for users. In the topsy-turvy world of telecoms, it is, putting it crudely, high enough prices, large enough profits to lure, tempt, coax, seduce people to come and compete with BT.
An established market-dominant operation, a virtual monopoly operation, has economies of scale and has technical advantages which it's very difficult for a newcomer to overcome in the initial phase. So you need some arrangements to give entry assistance of some sort or another. Now, I would argue the effect of that, there may be a theoretical small price penalty for a year or two, but I would argue that is very quickly overtaken by the dynamic effects of having a new market entry, the threat of someone else doing the job better and cheaper.
When I read a lot of the documents the regulators put out, there are little phrases here and there where they talk about giving the competition headroom, and perhaps too much competition from you would not be a very good thing. So, if I can put a very crude question and give me a very crude answer, has the regulation kept prices up?
I think on balance the answer is probably yes.
Telephone messages are zipping round the world at the speed of light. Competition is evolving with all the majesty of a large snail, however many files accumulated off-tel, on what BT cannot or may not do. Obvious things, like not going into mobile phones or cable television. Less obvious ones that rise indirectly out of the new technology.
We could, in theory, go to a Rowland Hill approach to pricing. We could do what the Post Office did with stamps and say there will only be one single call charge across the UK. We did think about that, but it isn't a starter because it would wipe the competition off the map in one go and we would be stopped from doing it.
That was why you decided?
Yes, because there was no way in which we would have got away with that.
Mercury Communications.
How much longer is this going to go on? Higher prices and jam tomorrow. The sort of restrictions that might have been acceptable when privatising was new and competition was young, they're starting to look tatty and horribly permanent. How much competition before you feel you can retire with a job well done?
Very difficult to say. And all judgments in competition tend to be case by case because you need to know so much about the actual structure of the market. It partly depends how many competitors there are. if one begins to talk in percentages, if, for instance, BT were to retain 60% of the market, if the rest of the 40% was divided between lots of sprats, it might be BT might still be really pretty dominant in the market. If, on the other hand, there were a couple of major operators with excellent resources and well established in given areas of the market, as well as smaller competitors, then I think one might begin to feel much more relaxed about the competitive situation. What one would be looking for is genuine commercial pressure on price, on innovation, on customer responsiveness. Once there were strong evidence of that, I think the regulator can quite deliberately and definitely draw back.
If you're offered a job as a regulator, you like to regulate. And, it's a bit like a boy with a Christmas toy. You've got this thing called BT, and on Christmas Day it's the present, and you wind it up and it does various bits and pieces. And then you start getting a bit bored with this, and by Boxing Day you start to try and take the clockwork out and you get all the bits and pieces on the table. And that's only human. I mean, if I were a regulator, that's exactly what I would want to do. You get interested in the toy, and therefore you get into the works.
It's a mighty queer argument that the way to stimulate competition in telecoms is to keep prices up and enterprise down. It's played along with because that pale hope of competition is the one alternative to a future of regulation to kingdom come, and BT need never have left the post office. So is the next decade going to be any different?
Clerics and medics, surveyors and lawyers, airline pilots, policewomen, stuntmen. Since 1824, we've looked after the investment, pension and life assurance needs of all kinds of professional people. Who are we? Clerical medical, of course, the choice of the professional. You're looking at temptation.
We began scouring the earth for oil over 90 years ago. Of course, in those days, we had no aerial photographs, no maps, no roads. Nevertheless, our ability to find oil in these adverse circumstances earned us a reputation for being the best in the business.
And let's get into a mellow mood.
BP are still out there today, finding oil and gas all over the world for all our tomorrows.
There's a new day dawning. You feel it in the air. The world is growing closer. You see it everywhere.
Cathay Pacific, helping the new world of international travelers arrive in better shape.
There's a new world.
Chew Endicay after meals and snacks. New Spearmint Endicay with its special active ingredient helps keep the acid away that can start tooth decay.
A cable of glass fibre as light and supple as ribbon, blown with compressed air from the ducts of BT's local loop. The local loop, bedrock of BT's crushing market strength, where messages leave the trunk networks like cars off a motorway and meander through byways to the house, shop, office they were meant for. Part of an experiment in Bishop Stortford, that thread of glass could transform the quality of the local loop, carrying all the telecoms, the entertainment, the broadband services men could desire. All communications known and yet to be discovered on that one thread. And there will be no real competition unless newcomers are prepared to duplicate this local loop, which has taken 100 years to lay down. Or unless newcomers find ways to avoid using it. Mobile phones are the first breach in the BT monopoly. Their vans track across country with their cameras hunting and sniffing for terrain with a clear line of sight for another transmission tower or their radio telephones. No wires. The telephone sends and receives radio signals from a chain of towers. Expensive, quality not that good, coverage can be patchy. Not even in the offices of Vodafone, the largest mobile company, did anyone expect them to sell in large numbers. But freeing the telephone from the wire and the wall was just like letting a dog off a chain. Since 1989, sales have doubled to 1.5 million. Costs are coming down, more firms are coming in, quality is about to improve as designs go digital. Should BT worry?
A lot of the growth in telephony will go in mobile communications as people want to be able to be available and to communicate when they're away from the opportunity of making a fixed call or receiving one. There will be some calls, undoubtedly, that would have taken place on the fixed network, which will now take place on the mobile. So there's a degree of substitution, but I think it's mainly adding to rather than competing with the fixed network calls.
No, I do think that is much nicer.
The mobile phone is, however, a wedge.
No, I should be home.
It could lower the already low use of the domestic telephone. It plants the idea that there is life outside BT. But will it do anything more?
Would BT change? Are BT changing to an animal? Well, they're certainly more aggressive as a competitor. But there's still that culture of a public utility.
Still?
Oh, very much so.
All these new managers?
Yep. I think they still feel that it should be people should regard it as a privilege to do business with them.
More bruising competition is expected from the cable television companies, laying their own local loop on BT's own patch. Cable television companies are now allowed to offer telephones as well. The cable's got plenty of room. The telephone undercuts BT quite blatantly. The drawback is that you've got to have a new telephone number.
Give some slack.
The cable companies don't expect to make money out of it at this stage. They want to dig in, consolidate, hook their customers with a telephone package, and wait.
When our customers take both products, as opposed to the cable-only product, they're twice as likely, if not 3 times as likely, to keep their cable product. And whilst we have not yet discovered what the formula is, it would seem as though the savings on the telephone service are, in their own minds, I think, are being cross-referenced to the cost of the entertainment service, and in so doing, I think, are causing the customers to believe that there's an exceptional value for money in terms of the combined package there.
It could be the leg up Mercury has prayed for. Cable companies would wire the streets and link them into Mercury's trunk network.
For the future, we can be very optimistic. Now, we're no longer on our own. There are more players in the market, and in particular, the cable TV operators are building local network, not only for entertainment, but also for telephony as well. And so we're sharing the burden. We're sharing the burden of the investment necessary to drive BT's market share down into the 60% range, where we think it has to be for competition rather than regulation to be the dominant influence on them. And I think this combination of Mercury's current position in the market, the expertise that we've built, the fact that we're well known now to all customers, and our ability to work together with other people who are sharing the investment burden, together with other innovations that are coming along in technology, so that more and more we're able to offer any customer that has access to BT also a Mercury service through new forms of access, and there's one called Easy Access that we're about to launch. So the combination of these two things, the fact it's easier to offer customers the Mercury service than ever it was before, and the fact that we're sharing the investment burden with a group of other serious, committed telecommunications players, means I think we can be much more optimistic about the rate at which we're going to take market share from BT in the future.
How seriously to take these brave words? The cable companies are filthy rich, backed by American and Canadian telecom money, prepared to play a waiting game, 15 years or more. Because they hold out that pale hope of competition, our regulator stops BT from fighting them on the beaches as they land. Stops BT from matching them service for service, television, telecoms, the full broadband package.
What I'm here whinging about is the fact that you're forcing us to compete without being able to use all of our capabilities, and that's what competition, it seems to me, is all about. Now, I can whinge about that from BT's perspective, but what I really don't understand is on the national agenda of almost every major country in the world is how do we get in place these switched multimedia broadband networks? And yet we sit here in the UK with the only player who really has the capability of delivering those, you telling us that we can't do it for 10 years. That confuses me. I don't understand it.
It's a very seductive theory. Competition in telecoms wouldn't be confined to the elite, to the huge, rich users anymore. Ordinary users would have at least three choices: of staying with BT, which would be the cheapest, or getting rid of all the wires and sockets and switching to radio and going mobile, which would be quite a lot dearer, or going for the really expensive option of a full cable TV plus telephone package. Now, the telephone element would be cheap. It could be Mercury's breakthrough, turning it into a formidable second trunk network. The equivalent of BT's local loop would be provided by a network of signed-on cable companies. It needs this to complete the transformation of telecoms in Britain from a state monopoly to a normal, competitive industry. And goodbye, regulators. But will it happen? Will enough people want to pay for all the goodies that cable provides?
No, I'm quite happy with BT. Quite happy with them. Been with them since day one. So, no, I can't see any reason to change, really.
I feel sort of comfortable and safe with British Telecom. I've used them and I've never had any problems. I would really need to know that there was something worth making the effort to change for.
I only ever watch very little television, let alone having all these other, knick-knacks and bits and bobs. I really wouldn't need them, honestly. There'd be no need. I'm sure there wouldn't.
Yes, if I felt they were going to give a better service, or it was going to save me money. Yes, I mean, I don't see why BT should have to maintain a monopoly in a position when the market's being opened up.
Well, it depends how much it will save me in a year. I mean, if it means it's going to save me a considerable amount, I'll do it. But if it's going to be a couple of quid a year, I just won't bother.
Because I don't really use it that much. I only use it for incoming calls. I mean, I do use it to make outgoing calls. I have considered Mercury, but to change the number wouldn't be worthwhile. So I've considered it, and I have actually had a hand phone, and it's very, very expensive. £25 a month plus VAT. So I have had alternatives, but I wouldn't move from BT.
I quite like a cell phone, but they're quite expensive because I think it's quite useful for a woman to have something that she can carry around. When I go out in the car, it'd be nice to have. But I don't think I'd really give much thought about the whole thing of changing from BT.
Well, I suppose if it was cheaper, or if they had a lot more telephones or something like that, I would switch then.
I've never really gone into what the benefits of the others are. Anyway, I don't know what the others. I mean, I know they exist, but I've never got into since they're going to be any cheaper or anything. I just automatically pay my telephone bill and that's it.
No, it'd be too inconvenient for me. I'm just too lazy to do that sort of thing. Too kind of lazy and too much inertia kind of thing. I'd take a lot of energy for somebody to come along and persuade me to do that.
I stay sceptical about the claims made by the entire telecoms industry that competition is going to tear strips off BT like sharks ripping the belly of a great white whale. The image feels wrong. BT is so big and so entrenched. Competition is still so marginal. Customers so apathetic. And the fact so apparent that if ever BT did grow lean and hungry, it could eliminate the lot with a flick of its tail if the regulator wasn't there to stop the massacre. Either way, the verdict on privatizing is a half success. The last 10 years have seen remarkable improvements. But if the industry is right, and competition is for real, that can only mean 10 years of privatizing has not made BT lean and hungry. But if I am right, and BT stays a giant among the minnows, privatizing's promises of a free, competitive telecom market will remain an insubstantial dream.
Next Thursday at 9, in the last of the series, Mary Goldring casts her eye over the electricity industry and asks who's gained from its privatisation.